Hmm. Hmm. Today on the Filter Express's Board Game of Education, we're talking about worker placement games. That's right, we are talking about worker placement games, or as BGG would describe them, action selection games, because not all games where you get to place pieces are necessarily worker placement games. You may also be placing tokens or chits to represent different abilities that you can temporarily use. So, what all does BGG say about worker placement games? Well, the term worker placement is a thematic term which usually is represented by little meeples like this in Stone Age, and these workers are placed on certain cards, or in this case, in an area of a map, in order to gain an action that later you will take all of your workers off, complete those actions, and then in the next round, this is important, all of the actions will be back open to all of the players. And in some cases, one of those actions you can take is getting to go first. But in this case, in Stone Age's case, the first player token simply gets passed around clockwise. So what all makes a worker placement game a worker placement game, and what games might have worker placement in it but not really be a worker placement game? Let's dive into that. So, Stone Age, first of all, is a great starter worker placement game, and they've even got My First Stone Age. It's just a well put together game, very well balanced, and it's, even though it's essentially the same game every time you play it, the replay value is still there because you can try different strategies in order to get yourself more victory points and win the game. Like in many worker placement games, there's also some in-game scoring that happens with these cards, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all worker placement games are like this. So, well, let's just get started on one of the big things about worker placement is that there is also usually a blocking mechanic. In other words, as you play the game, other players can block you from gaining certain actions and you can block them. So it's like, man, there's only one space to place a worker here and yellow's already got it, and then there's two spaces right here, and whenever you place workers here, you have to place two, and once again, yellow beat me to it, but I beat them to the agriculture section or the farming section, and that means that at the end, when I take this meeple back, I get to move up my agriculture by one, and that prevents me from having to go hunting and gathering for more food for my tribe. And another important aspect of worker placement is that it is the main mechanism of the game. It is the driving force behind how the game is played and won. So, like in a game like Scythe, there's definitely workers on the field, but it's not really worker placement, it's more worker movement. Also, while getting the resources that these workers create is extremely important to the game, it's not the sole driving factor in how the game is won. You can go a very militaristic route with Scythe and also win in that respect as well. But in this case, in order to win the game, I have to run around with these workers and each round place them on different areas. Say I need to get more wood, so I place my workers on the available wood spaces that yellow has left open, and then in this case, which is something I really like, we've got dice that we roll, and we put them in this nice cup, and it's just got this nice sound to it. It's almost ASMR. But roll the dice. We'll say that was a 5 there. We count up the total number, do some long division, and learn that how much wood we actually get. We then stockpile this resource, and we can use it later to, say, build huts to add to our village, or to purchase other cards that we also have to place a worker on in order to gain. So I can spend 2 wood to purchase this card. I get my worker back. Worker goes over into my campfire, and then I get the immediate effect of gaining 3 food to help feed my tribe at the end of each round. And then at the end of the game, there is a victory point bonus that I'll get when I add up all sorts of different aspects. Like this says, hey, for every point in agriculture that you've got, multiply that by 2, and that's how many victory points you get just for that card. So what else did it say about worker placement? Well, it also said that each round the workers are collected back up, and the options are opened again for all of the players to use. So by the end of a round, all of the workers have been utilized, the action that you selected with them has been performed, and on the next round, in this case, I pass on the first player token to someone else, and now I've got a smorgasbord of actions to do, and I can choose to perform different actions that maybe I didn't do last time, such as getting stone or gold or brick. What does this mean in terms of other games? Let's look at Mission Red Planet. You might think that the astronauts kind of represent workers as well, because when they occupy a certain area on the map, then they are technically collecting that resource, right? Not exactly. Even BGG doesn't even say that it's a worker placement game. No, those astronauts are controlling an area, or have the majority influence in an area, and that is why they're getting that resource. Also, they don't leave the board. Other games that you may know of that do count as worker placement games are Caelus and Agricola and Caverna, those kinds of games, to give you more of an idea. So what about a game like Quadropolis? Let's look at it and see what we might deduce from a game like that. So this is Quadropolis, and in this game I am placing architects around this central building board in order to grab these tiles to place them in my city, which I'm building. And there are certain ways in which to build your city more efficiently, and that is denoted on this card right here. It lets you know, hey, building your apartment buildings around parks gets you more points, and building your factories around commercial zones and harbors gets you more points, that kind of thing. And there are also other boons and things that can set you back. Each tile you get is going to get you certain resources, such as this, which is kind of like pollution, or this, which is just people. And you might say, okay, well, let's see. BGG says that, you've got to place the workers in order to get an action. So it's action selection. But really, this guy is just searching for a tile. You get the tile, not necessarily an action. But there is blocking, say, because let's say I want this tile right here. Well, these architects from myself and other players are blocking any chance that I have of being able to get this tile right here. So yeah, I can get a building, put it in the proper area, and then in the end game, what my people are doing is technically activating these different locations depending on what symbol they may have in order to get me end-game victory points. So, is this a worker placement game? Well, technically, no. You see, in a worker placement game, they have pretty strict criteria on BGG as to what worker placement is. And if you want to call these citizens workers, well, that's not technically true. I mean, these people are just in a shopping center. This person is, at a government building, and, this is technically a chit that represents pollution. So these people are only being used once, and that is to figure out how you want to place them at the end of the game to count up your total victory points to see who the winner of this game is. And over here, once again, you're not necessarily choosing an action as you are getting a tile. So this is a tile laying game. This is sort of a hand management in a way, I guess. I guess these architects are your hand, even though you could argue that they are the chits that represent your action selection. But once again, it doesn't quite meet the criteria the way that BGG says it should. So this is more of a tile laying / city building game that kind of has a little bit of worker placement in it. Maybe? I don't know. You leave a comment below whether you think Quadropolis should count as a worker placement game based on BGG's definition. Well, I hope this helped you understand worker placement games, what they are, what they aren't, and what kind of is in a gray area. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the Felroad Express and check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you haven't tried out a worker placement game before, Stone Age is a great place to start. As of right now, it is number 116 on Board Game Geek. So it used to be in the top 100 board games around the world, but since then has slowly been pushed out by a lot of these other games like A Feast for Odin, Caverna, Agricola, and Kalis. So I hope you enjoyed this version of the Board Game of Education. We've got more coming, and we've got more board game and video games coming on the Felroad Express. I've been Joshua Thomas. I'll check you next time.